Okay, welcome. Welcome everyone to session number 265 of Kevin Reed's A Course in Miracles. And today we are in the Manual for Teachers. And we will focus on question number 16. And that question is, how should the teacher of God spend his day? All righty. Now remember, at the beginning of this journey into the manual, Jesus says, anyone who wants to be a teacher of God is a teacher of God. All right? And then he gives us little gradations, okay? There's the advanced teacher of God, and then there's what Jesus would call the teachers of teachers. Right? Jesus would be a teacher of teachers. Right? People who have come to that realization that they are virtually lucid dreamers, bringing the message of the oneness to those who believe they're separated. Right? But as we travel on in our journey up the ladder, so to speak, always learn to trust more in the Holy Spirit, right? The memory of who we really are in our mind, the memory of the oneness. We learn to trust that more for helping us with our perception. We graduate up into advanced teachers. And as I say, and then you get to the top, and it's the teacher of teachers. And Dr. Wapnick would always say, don't make the mistake of thinking you're further along than you are. The advanced teachers of God and the teachers of God. The advanced teachers of God have virtually relinquished any attachment to their egos. And of course, the teacher of teacher has no ego, no desire for the ego thought system. All right? So we advance up that way. All right. So let's just begin, and I'll keep talking as we move along. How should the teacher of God spend his day? To the advanced teacher of God, this question is meaningless. There's no program, for the lessons change each day. Yet the teacher of God is sure of but one thing: they do not change at random. Seeing this and understanding that it is true, he rests content. He will be told all that his role should be, this day and every day. And those who share that role with him will find him, so they can learn the lessons for the day together. Not one is absent whom he needs. Not one is sent without a learning goal already set, and one which can be learned that very day. For the advanced teacher of God, this question is superfluous. It has been asked and answered, and he keeps in constant contact with the answer. He is set and sees the road on which he walks stretch surely and smoothly before him. Okay. So to the advanced teacher of God, who is always in contact with the Holy Spirit, always in contact with the answer, there's no need for a plan or anything. Whatever comes along that day, the advanced teacher's response will be something that reflects the oneness, something that reflects eternal love. Okay? No matter what the situation that comes before him or her. Right? And those who share the role will find him, so they can learn the lessons for the day together. All right? Not one is absent whom he needs. No one is sent without a learning goal already set. Right? And elsewhere in the Course in Miracles, Jesus talks about a holy encounter. And he says, every encounter is a holy encounter. And that's the mindset of the advanced teacher. He only encounters the innocence, the oneness in the other, and he reflects that to them. Right? It might take a specific action or specific words, because we're here where we need words and actions, but they're all based in that constant contact with the answer, the capital A. He is set, and he sees the road on which he walks stretched surely and smoothly before him. Okay, paragraph 2. But what about those who have not reached his certainty? They are not yet ready for such lack of structuring on their own part. What must they do to learn to give the day to God? There are some general rules which do apply, although each one must use them as best he can in his own way. Routines as such are dangerous because they easily become gods in their own right, threatening the very goals for which they were set up. Broadly speaking, then, it can be said that it is well to start the day. It is well to start the day right. It is always possible to begin again, should the day begin with an error. Yet there are obvious advantages in terms of saving time. Okay, he says, but what about those who have not reached the certainty of the advanced teacher? That's all of us. All right, we have not reached that certainty. All right. Where we know that we are at home in God, dreaming of exile. All right. He says, so we are not ready for such lack of structure, where we could just move through the world reflecting the oneness. Right. So he says, then what should we do, people like us, to learn to give the day to God? Right. He says, so some rules apply, but you have to watch out for rules too. All right. Like, oh, I meditate in the mornings now, and then all of a sudden I say, well, yeah, if I don't meditate in the morning, I feel horrible the rest of the day. That's being bound, that's making the meditation itself a god, so to speak. All right. There are some general rules, though each one must use them as best he can in his own way. All right. Routines as such are dangerous. All right. Any kind of a routine. But even here he's talking about even starting your day, communicating with the oneness, sitting in the presence of the oneness, however you want to put it, meditating. Okay. I knew people that, didn't feel right if they didn't work out in the morning. I got to get my workout in the morning, or else I feel terrible all day. Even when they went on vacation, they had to, book a place to stay that had a gym. Okay, whatever. But that's like making the routine, special. That's a special relationship, right? I don't feel good. I don't feel peaceful unless I have my coffee first, right? Or unless I do whatever. So routines as such are dangerous because they easily become gods in their own right. And they threaten the very goals for which they were set up. So I say, okay, I want to meditate every morning. But if I'm getting hooked on it, so to speak, if I don't feel good, if I don't do it, right, then I have to be careful, right? Because it's threatening the goal for which I set up the routine, right? So broadly speaking then, in paragraph 2, sentence 6, it can be said that it is well to start the day right, and it is always possible to begin again. Right? Should the day begin with an error? Right? Yet there are obvious advantages in terms of saving time. Right? Because we believe we're in time. Right? We're trying to bring about the end of time. Right? But we have to use time to bring about its end. Okay? So he says, starting off the day, thinking of God or connecting with God, connecting with all that is, any way you want to put it, right? Is that will definitely save you time. Right? It will speed up the process of remembering just what you are. Right? But he says, but look, if that doesn't happen one morning, say one morning you get woke up with a phone call, and it's disturbing news, and you got to hurry. Right? Or even your boss calls you, said so and so's called in sick. There's something wrong. You got to come in. All right. Maybe you got to hit the ground running, as they say. He said it's always possible to, it's always possible to communicate with God. You could set it up for, okay, as soon as I get to work, I'll sit, take a breath. I mean, it doesn't take long to sit to be in the presence of the oneness. Right? It doesn't have to be a structured certain amount of time. Right? Although in the workbook, which is 365 lessons corresponding to 365 days in a year, Jesus says it's a training period. And this is what he's trying to do, train us to start the day thinking in terms of the oneness, thinking in terms of communicating with God, communicating with our higher selves, our true selves. And those are structured lessons. Okay? And so he says in paragraph 3, at the beginning, it is wise to think in terms of time. All right? This is by no means the ultimate criterion, he says. But at the outset, it is probably the simplest to observe. The saving of time is an essential early emphasis, which, although it remains important throughout the learning process, becomes less and less emphasized. At the outset, we can safely say that time devoted to starting the day right does indeed save time. How much time should be so spent? This must depend on the teacher of God himself. He cannot claim the title until he has gone through the workbook, since we are learning within the framework of our course. After completing the more structured practice periods, which the workbook contains, individual need becomes the chief consideration. Excuse me, my throat gets dry. So in the workbook, and if you're not familiar with it, like we say, 365 lessons, and Jesus at some points will say, take a minute to do this. And then the periods of time that we devote to thinking of the lesson for the day become a little longer, become more frequent during the day. Okay? It's a matter of training the mind to break from the ego thought system for a moment and come back into the right mind. Okay? But he says, after completing the more structured practice periods, which the workbook contains, individual need becomes the chief consideration. So how much time do you need? Right? You can't do it right away this morning. You do it as soon as you can. It's like, don't beat yourself up. All right? You just get on that mindset that as soon as I can, I'm going to say hello to the oneness. I'm going to sit and have a cuppa with the oneness. All right? Don't be so rigid. As Dr. Wapnick would always say to me, don't take things so seriously. Okay. But it's always, in other words, he's telling us what he said in the text. We're using time to escape from time, because time is part of the illusion. Right? Let's just look at one other sentence or two here. Paragraph 3, sentence 4. At the outset, we can safely say the time devoted to starting the day right does indeed save time. Right? So we want to start the day right, just sitting in the awareness of the oneness. I ask Jesus to be my guide. Help me to see through the eyes of peace. That's words that I use at times. All right? But mostly. All right? How much time should be so spent? He goes, that must depend on the teacher of God himself. All right? And he's going to say, well, let's just go on and go to paragraph 4. He says, this course is always practical. It may be that the teacher of God is not in a situation that fosters quiet thought as he awakes. If this is so, let him but remember that he chooses to spend time with God as soon as possible, and let him do so. Duration is not the major concern. One can easily sit still an hour with closed eyes and accomplish nothing. One can easily give God only an instant, and in that instant join him completely. Perhaps the one generalization that can be made is this: as soon as possible after waking, take your quiet time. Continue a minute or two after you find it to be difficult. You may find that the difficulty will diminish and drop away. If not, this is the time to stop. Right? You're sitting and you're just trying to get into that meditative space, that space where you're sitting in the oneness, right? Sitting in the present moment. Right? And after a while, you get a little fidgety. Thoughts start knocking on your door. Right? He says, just try to sit still for a moment, see if that stops. And if not, no problem. He says, if not, it's the time to stop. Don't force yourself to do anything. Right? Forcing ourselves to do things really does foster resentment. You know, I don't want to do it. Right? Believe me, I know myself. Paragraph 5. The same procedure should be followed at night. Perhaps your quiet time should be fairly early in the evening, if it is not feasible for you to take it just before going to sleep. It is not wise to lie down for it. It's like the only place in the book where Jesus gives that kind of a instruction. All right, so specific. All right, he's just telling you, look, to take that quiet time at night, don't do it when you're laying down to go to sleep, because then you're going to go to sleep. Because your nervous system and your whole body is going to be trained just to go, oh, and you're out, down for the count. All right. So he advises us, don't do this laying down. It is better to sit up in whatever position you prefer. Having gone through the workbook, you must have come to some conclusions in this respect. If possible, however, just before going to sleep is a desirable time to devote to God. It sets your mind into a pattern of rest and orients you away from fear. It is expedient to spend this time, if it is expedient to spend this time earlier, at least be sure that you do not forget a brief period, not more than a moment will do, in which you close your eyes and think of God. Right? So he says, so if you take your quiet time at some point in the evening, okay, cool. All right. So then, in an hour or so, then you're going to bed, you're going to sleep, he says, just take a moment. All right. Close your eyes and think of God. Any way you want. Paragraph 6. There is one thought in particular that should be remembered throughout the day. It is a thought of pure joy, a thought of peace, a thought of limitless release. Limitless because all things are freed within it. It says, you think you made a place of safety for yourself. You think you made a power that can save you from all the fearful things you see in dreams. It is not so. Your safety lies not there. What you give up is merely the illusion of protecting illusions. And it is this you fear, and only this. How foolish to be so afraid of nothing. Nothing at all. Your defenses will not work, but you are not in danger. You have no need of them. Recognize this, and they will disappear. And only then will you accept your real protection. Okay. So he says there's one thought in particular that should be remembered throughout the day. It's that at any given moment you can remember that you exist in a state of joy, a thought of peace, a thought of limitless release. It releases everything. Everything you perceive is now released from the guilt of separation, because you are walking around in the oneness, in the present moment, you could call it. All right? And it's limitless because all things are freed within it. All right? Now, here in sentence 3, Dr. Wapnick would tell us that he starts to get into the idea of magic, which will be in the next question. Right. The next question will, how do God's teachers deal with magic thoughts? All right. So So he says, you think you made a place of safety for yourself. All right? The world. Okay. We thought we achieved separation. All right? We wanted to feel what individuality was. And our Creator ignored that. He knew it was silly. She knew it was silly. The Creator knew it was silly. But we became angry and said, okay, I'll do it myself. I have a mind as powerful as yours. And I will become an individual. When I thought I did that, it was immense guilt. I turned my back on the oneness. All of a sudden, I experienced that tremendous lack. What did I do? I turned my back on everything. Now I'm nothing. And in the process of projection, I'm projecting the anger onto my father. Now my father's angry at me. Right? So the problem begins in, there's no other place where the problem is. It's in our mind. Okay? But the ego thought system counsels us, gives us the idea, let's project out of the mind. We'll be safe there, okay? I mean, it's the equivalent of Adam and Eve taking a bite of the apple, then all of a sudden they hear God stomping through the garden and they hide, all right? They think they made a place of safety for themselves among the trees, right? So all these solutions that are outside the mind, right? The true solution to the thought of separation is what we call the atonement principle. Accepting the fact that I never separated. I never separated from the mind that thought of me. Right? But here in this world, the manifestation of the ego thought system, right, brought about by the thought of separation, guilt, and fear. Right. Now it looks like the fear takes many shapes. Instead of just the fear of reprisal, right, the imagined fear of reprisal by God. Now it's, you don't have enough money, you're not good looking enough, you don't have a place to sleep, there's enemies knocking at the door, there's germs in the air. It's a paranoid world. There's always something to be afraid of. And so we use what Jesus calls magic thoughts to protect ourselves. These are solutions that are outside of the mind. Right? If we were in the mind, we would just know there's only one problem. And that problem is I believe I separated, and there's only one solution, which is accepting the fact that I never separated. Right? But out here, there's so many problems. Right? He says, you think you made a place of safety. You think you made a power that can save you from all the fearful things you see in dreams. Right? It's not so. Your safety lies not there. Right? So what you give up is merely the illusion of protecting illusions. So all these things that I do, I have the illusion of protecting the illusion. Okay? And it is this you fear, and only this. How foolish to be so afraid of nothing, nothing at all. Your defenses will not work, but you're not in danger. You have no need of them. Recognize this and they will disappear. And only then will you accept your real protection. Right? Your real protection is the fact that you are at home in the mind of God. You are at home in the oneness. Right? just some side notes on the idea of magic, which, as I say, Jesus is going to get into more and more as he goes to the next question. All right, Dr. Wapnick always would say, and it was cool, and I always thought of my father when he would say stuff like this, because my father would like clever statements. He goes, magic, it's the ego's maladaptive solution to a non-existent problem. So the non-existent problem is that we separated from the oneness. And that bursts into billions of problems, all right, for which we have answers. All right? But ultimately, the answers don't work out. All right? I mean, you have a headache, you take an aspirin. Jesus is saying he's not saying don't take an aspirin. Don't take a Tylenol. All right? Don't take whatever it is you take for your pain. He's not saying that. He's just saying realize that this will not bring you the peace of God. Okay? It might help you calm down a little so that you can remember who you are. So Jesus is not opposed to mixing a little magic, a little miracle along the way. All right? He's not pointing his finger saying, don't get that operation. All right? Don't have that relationship, because that's magic also. Special relationships. Right? It's all the attempt to solve the problem of guilt, which is in the mind, with something that's external. Oh, I feel this horrible loneliness. As you grow up, you become a teenager, you feel like an outcast. And you feel like a relationship will help. Oh, yes. You complete me, all that stuff. I'm not goofing on people that say that, believe me. It's just that the problem is I feel alone. That's part of the guilt. All right? I turn my back on the oneness. All right? Now I feel like I'm in the nothingness. All right? And so I do what I have to do to have what I think will help me, all right? And that would be a relationship, all right? Which is a magic solution in the words of the Course here, all right? It attempts to solve the problem of guilt in the mind with something external. And I don't have enough money. I think I have to go get this job. Right? This job pays me a lot of money. I hate it, but I got to do it because I need the money. That's all. Even if you like your job, it's still a solution, for all these problems that we think we have. Right? And no one is saying don't do that. Right? You can't just quit your job and say, no, I am part of the oneness. Don't do that. Be normal. All right? As Ken would say, don't be a bliss ninny. All right? Just be normal. Just recognize that all these solutions they're not helping you to get the peace of God. All right? They won't bring the peace of God. I remember up in Roscoe, New York, when we used to go up there to study the Course with Dr. Wapnick. There was a man who would always go there. He was an instructor with the New York City Fire Department. Right? Big, strong guy, right? Very, very affable person, right? And he was a physical instructor. Right? He was a trainer for the cadets, for the probies, as they call them. All right? So he was into physical training. And even up in the Catskills, sitting on the little dock they had by the lake, Tanana Lake. You know, early in the morning, he's got his dumbbells out there, and he's pumping his biceps, and Ken just happened to be walking along, and he knew Jim very well, you know. And he just passed by, and he goes, "You know, Jim, that's not going to bring you the peace of God." And he kept walking. And he could do that. He had that kind of relationship with Jim. You know, he could just throw in that zinger and keep walking. But that's it. That keeping that body in shape like that, that's a magic thought. That's a magic solution. Keeping yourself strong against whatever's coming up next, you know. We'll talk, I'm sure I'll talk more about that. Okay. But it's all very interesting. You know, we think there's solutions out there to the myriad problems that we think we have, right? And we're not saying to just stop thinking you have problems. The idea is to come inside to your right mind, so to speak. Come into the mind and ask the Holy Spirit, how do I see this correctly? All right? Holy Spirit's not going to tell you, don't take that Tylenol. You know? If I didn't take a few Tylenols in the past couple of weeks, I couldn't sleep. My knee was killing me. I twisted my knee. So, use a little magic. All right? Hey, doctors are magic. Wives and lovers and husbands are magic. All right? It's all very magical. It's like a Disney movie. It's like Disney World. Okay. Let's see. Where was I before I so rudely interrupted myself? Okay, so what he's saying is just recognize that, oh yeah, this is what I think has to be done. And do it. Don't worry about it. Don't feel guilty about it. Just realize this is not the peace of God. Come inside and dedicate yourself to finding the peace of God. That's all. Ask Jesus, help me to find it. Take my hand. Walk me through this. Walk me through this world. Walk me through this experience. All right. He says, your defenses will not work, but you are not in danger. All right? That's the key. You're not in danger. You never left the mind that thought of you. You're not here by yourself being threatened. This is a dream. He says, you have no need of, he says, your defenses will not work, but you're not in danger. You have no need of them. He says, recognize this and they will disappear. All right? Easy to say, recognize this. But we recognize it by first admitting, oh yeah, this is what I think I need. And come into the Holy Spirit and ask for guidance. Help me to see correctly. Help me to see my marriage correctly. All right? I might have started out with a special relationship, which is like a bargain. You know, I do this, you do that. You supply what I think I need. You know, and I supply as little as possible. But help me to see correctly. And then your perception of your relationship changes. You realize what it's for. It's for recognizing the innocence in the other. And thereby remembering your own. And thereby moving to that state of joy throughout the day. So you recognize you're using magic, And you just ask, help me to see it correctly. Right? Nobody's asking you to suffer. Right? Just look at it correctly. That's what the Course is all about. He says, only then will you accept your real protection. You accept your real protection, which is the fact that you never left the mind of God. Right? The love and the innocence surround you. Right? Paragraph 7. How simply and how easily does time slip by for the teacher of God who has accepted his protection. All that he did before in the name of safety no longer interests him. For he is safe and knows it to be so. He has a guide who will not fail. He need make no distinctions among the problems he perceives. For he to whom he turns with all of them recognizes no order of difficulty in resolving them. He is as safe in the present as he was before illusions were accepted into his mind, and as he will be when he has let them go. There is no difference in his state at different times and different places, because they are all one to God. This is his safety. He has no need for more than this. All right? He has a guide who will not fail. All right? The Holy Spirit, Jesus. All right? Your true self, the memory of who you are. And then, because all the problems, your guide, right, recognizes all the problems to be the same. One is not worse than the other. They're all a result of believing that I'm separated. That's the problem. Right. For he to whom he turns with all of these problems recognizes no order of difficulty in resolving them. Right. He is as safe in the present as he was before illusions were accepted into his mind. I'm as safe as the moment I was created by God, before illusions were accepted into the mind. Right? And as he will be when he has let them go. You'll be safe when you let them go. There is no difference in his state at different times, different places, because they're all one to God. This is his safety. The more and more I connect to my inner guides, my higher self, the Holy Spirit, Jesus, right? The more I connect, the more I will want to connect, because I see things are working out. Right? I see things differently. And little by little, I'm more relaxed, I'm happier, until I reach that place where I spend the day in joy, reflecting the oneness to whatever comes along. Right? And I have no need for more than this. Paragraph 8. Yet there will be temptations along the way the teacher of God has yet to travel. And he has need of reminding himself throughout the day of his protection. How can he do this? Particularly during the time when his mind is occupied with external things. He can but try, and his success depends on his conviction that he will succeed. He must be sure success is not of him, but will be given him at any time, in any place, and circumstance that he calls for it. That's the trust we're talking about. There are times his certainty will waver. Right? And the instant this occurs, he will return to earlier attempts to place reliance on himself alone. Forget not that this is magic. And magic is a sorry substitute for true assistance. It is not good enough for God's teacher, because it is not enough for God's son. I need to cough again, sorry. Okay, so here's the external problem. I live in an apartment in Manhattan. They changed around the way they heat the apartment. Long story short, I have one radiator that does not shut off. It pumps out the heat from fiery Gehenna 24 hours a day. And where I'm sitting now is about 4 feet away from that radiator. So it's drying out my throat. And end of story. I have to use a magical solution, which will be calling the maintenance department. Okay. That's another story in itself. All right, let me take a little sip here. See, there's no problem. You're going to use a little magic, okay? Because there's times when my certainty will waver. Oh my God, my throat is drying up. I'm hot as hell. Now I'm switched off from the Holy Spirit. So there are times when certainty will waver. And the instant this occurs, he will return to earlier attempts to place reliance on himself alone. Right, I'll go fix that valve. All right. Forget not that this is magic. He will return to earlier attempts to place reliance on himself alone. And that happens during the course of our lives. This is too important. I know what to do. It's like I'm so afraid of whatever's happening that I have to take charge. So you're saying, look, I know that's going to happen. All right? I know it's going to happen. All right? He says, but don't forget that this is magic. And magic is a sorry substitute for true assistance. All right? I don't know what the truth looks like. All I know is that I go to my inner guide, the Holy Spirit, Jesus, and I ask, help me to see this correctly. All right? So I'm not in a panic about the radiator pumping the room full of heat where I spend most of my day. All right? And I'm not in a panic because I got the idea to go to maintenance, and they had the day off yesterday. It was the day after Thanksgiving. Everybody that runs the buildings, they were off. All right? So there's another, I got to do this myself. So you calm down. You say, look, okay. And they tell me the people that run the heating system, they only come to the building on Fridays. And so I said, oh yes, but not this Friday, because it's the day after Thanksgiving. Anyway, yeah. So the solution is now, I ask Jesus, how do I be peaceful? All right? In Dante's Inferno here. How do I be peaceful? Instead of trying to fix it myself and burning my hands. All right? Long story made longer. All right? Just remember, it's all magic. Just ask, how can I be peaceful in the midst of this? Right? I want to be peaceful. And if you need an idea, you'll get an idea. You know? You know, the idea might be, hey, Kev, why don't you just go to the other room? You know, as Jesus said to Helen one time, the thing to do at the desert is to leave. Okay? So, magic is not good enough for God's teachers because it's not good enough for God's Son. All right? Paragraph 9. The avoidance of magic is the avoidance of temptation. For all temptation is nothing more than the attempt to substitute another will for God's. Okay? These attempts may indeed seem frightening, but they are merely pathetic. They can have no effects, neither good nor bad, neither rewarding nor demanding sacrifice, healing nor destructive, quieting nor fearful. When all magic is recognized as merely nothing, the teacher of God has reached the most advanced state. All intermediate lessons will lead to this and bring the goal nearer to recognition. For magic of any kind, in all its forms, simply does nothing. Its powerlessness is the reason it can be so easily escaped. What has no effects can hardly terrify. Okay. All right. So the avoidance of magic is the avoidance of temptation. It says, for all temptation is nothing more than the attempt to substitute another will for God's. Right? Like the special relationships, things that I think will bring me what I think I need, whether it's comfort or security or physical pleasure or mental calmness, whatever it is. I think I can get it out there. He says they're all substitutes for the will of God, which is, you are my son. Right? You are at peace forever. Right? They're substitutes for the love of God, you could say. Right? All the things, all the bargains that I make, all the things that I think I need. But then he says that when all magic is recognized, right, the teacher of God has reached the most advanced state. When you realize that all my needs are met by remembering the oneness, right? By remembering that I have no needs. Right? And it's a practice and a process. Okay? Don't beat yourself up. Just notice when you get upset, when you get frightened, you think you got to take control of the situation, whatever it is. Then that's what we do as human beings. Jesus knows that. He says, just okay. All right, calm down. All right, do what you think you have to do, and remember, it's magic. It's not going to the right mind to help you see correctly. All right. Although in some cases I think that is the result. Like my friends tell me, I went back into therapy and this and it's really helping me. And good. I say that could be the result of a right-minded decision. I tell Jesus or Holy Spirit, look, I'm having such a problem with this. Can you help me out? And the answers, the help, comes in a language that you understand. It fits your circumstance, your dream, your life. So you might get the bright idea, oh yeah, I remember I used to go to this therapist I liked. And you reestablish a relationship with them and you start to feel a little bit better. Good. Good. A little magic, a little miracle. Help me to see correctly. That's the miracle. All right? And then you get an idea. Do this. Until you work your way out to the place where you're always reliant on your right mind. Until you want nothing else except to be in the presence of truth and spend your day in joy. All right? So when all magic is recognized as merely nothing, the teacher of God has reached the most advanced state. All intermediate lessons will lead to this and bring the goal nearer to recognition. For magic of any kind, in all its forms, simply does nothing. Its powerlessness is the reason it can be so easily escaped. It has no effects. What has no effects can hardly terrify. All right? But just notice our belief in the magic. And you just ask for help with that, that's all. Nobody's saying don't do that. You know? Paragraph 10. There is no substitute for the will of God. In simple statement, it is to this fact that the teacher of God devotes his day. Each substitute he may accept as real can but deceive him. But he is safe from all deception if he so decides. Perhaps he needs to remember, God is with me. I cannot be deceived. Perhaps he prefers other words, or only one, or none at all. Yet each temptation to accept magic as true must be abandoned through his recognition. Not that it is fearful, not that it is sinful, not that it is dangerous, but merely that it is meaningless, rooted in sacrifice and separation. Two aspects of one era and no more. He merely chooses to give up all that he never had. For this sacrifice is heaven restored to his awareness. All right? So he says there's no substitute for the will of God. You know, there's no substitute for the love of God. All right? He says, in simple statement, it is to this fact that the teacher of God devotes his day. We bring ourselves back to that thought. There is no substitute for the will of God. All right. But he is safe from all deception if he so decides. So it's my choice. All right. Perhaps he needs to remember. God is with me. I cannot be deceived. Perhaps other words, or only one, or none at all. Right? So in other words, form doesn't matter. Form doesn't matter. It brings me back to a time when, I could see the specific spot where I was. Walking up the street to go to this house where I would meet these people. And this was 15 years before I met the Course. I always had a little relationship with Jesus, believe me. And I would use words. I would say, Jesus protects me and directs me. All right? When I was getting a little nervous. And then I would go do what I want, you know what I mean? Which many times had me bouncing off the walls, so to speak. All right? So perhaps you prefer other words, or only one, like Jesus, like Ken would say. Can you say help? Right? All right. Yet each temptation to accept magic as true must be abandoned. Not that it is fearful. It's not fearful. It's not sinful. Right? It's not dangerous. But it's just meaningless. Ultimately, we will see the meaninglessness of everything we thought we had to do or get or have. All right? We will see it if we just use your words and say, help me to see correctly. I'm willing to see correctly. Jesus protects me and directs me, I used to say. Right? All right. And in sentence 9, paragraph 10, he says this error, this belief in separation, right? It's rooted in sacrifice and separation. This belief in magic. It's rooted in the idea of separation, which is the initial sacrifice. I sacrificed the oneness. I gave it up. Right? It's rooted in sacrifice and separation. Right? Two aspects of one era and no more. He merely chooses to give up all he never had. And for this sacrifice is heaven restored to his awareness. So I merely choose, help me to see correctly. Right? That's the process of leaving behind what I never really had. I never really had the safety that the world provides. Right? I never had that security. I never had the wealth, whatever, and all the other stuff that the world provides. Right? When we see, we're not really giving up anything. We're just letting it go, relinquishing it. And for this sacrifice, heaven is restored to his awareness. Paragraph 11. Is not this an exchange that you would want? The world would gladly make it if it knew it could be made. It is God's teachers who must teach that it can. And so it is their function to make sure that they have learned it. No risk is possible throughout the day except to put your trust in magic. For it is only this that leads to pain. There is no will but God's. His teachers know that this is so and have learned that everything but this is magic. All belief in magic is maintained by just one simple-minded illusion, that it works. All through his training, every day, every hour, and every minute and second, must God's teachers learn to recognize the forms of magic and perceive their meaninglessness. Fear is withdrawn from them, and so they go. And thus the gate of heaven is reopened, and its light can shine again on an untroubled mind. All right? So when he says all through the day, he's just talking about just look. All right? Every hour, every minute, every second, just look and recognize the forms of magic. All right? And ask for help to see them correctly. Just help me to see it correctly. By doing that, there'll be less and less fear involved in relinquishing the magic. Okay? Because he said, and you'll see how strong it is. He says, all belief in magic is maintained by just one simple-minded illusion. Right? So we truly believe in magic. Why? Because it's the illusion that it works. Right? I got to sleep because my knee didn't hurt me anymore, because of the magic. So that reinforces the belief that it works. All right? Because I'm too fearful to let my mind just take over. But little by little, I trust more in my inner guides, and by asking, help me, I'm willing to see correctly. And all these things are recognized for what they are. Right? They're just attempts to solve the problem of guilt, right? Which we think is now outside. And in that way, they are maladaptive solutions to a non-existent problem. They're solutions that don't work, and actually the problem doesn't even exist. You never separate it. So that's how the teacher of God should spend his day. All right? Coming to the right mind to ask for correction, observing and asking for correction. And as we grow in awareness of our connection to God, we demonstrate. That's the teacher's job. Right? It's their function, right, to make sure that they have learned the will of God, that they learn that they are safe in the mind of God. The world would gladly make this exchange if it knew that it could be made. And it is God's teachers who must teach that it can. So by example, right, I live in happiness. Right? And I demonstrate to the world that it's possible. Right? So basically through the day is to start your day connecting with God, and all during the day remind yourself that there is no will but God's, and at the end of the day remind yourself again, connect with God, and that's how you spend your day. In between, stuff happens, all right? But with that foundation, your response is it's better. Let's put it that way. It gets better and better. Alrighty then. What I'm thinking is, there was a lot said here, but the bottom line is this: how should a teacher of God spend his day? As much as you can. Become prayerful, as they say. Become mindful, as they say. Become aware of your connection to God. Ask for clarity on that. Ask for the truth to come up as often as you can during the day. And you'll be well on your way to becoming a person who can demonstrate that you are always safe in the mind of God. All righty then. I feel like a French fry at McDonald's. Until the next time. All right, be mindful.